Long before he starred in the crime dramas of Jean-Pierre Melville, Alain Delon had already encountered real gunfire. On October 15, 1945, when French politician and convicted traitor Pierre Laval was executed at Fresnes prison, young Alain was at home close by playing with the children of the guards. The sound of the gunshots left a major impression on him. This moment remained one of Delon's most vivid memories from his early years, and would in some ways become a kind of symbol of his own life. He arrived in movies like a bullet, a deadly, beautiful one, and left a trail of destruction behind him. No actor today would dare speak their mind in the way Alain Delon did, and very few have managed to escape unscathed from a mysterious scandal that could have brought an entire nation to its knees. This is the thrilling story of Alain Delon, the most beautiful man in the world. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon was born on November 8, 1935, at 99 Houdon Street in Sceaux, a prosperous suburb of Paris. The Delon family came from Saint-Vincent-l'Espinasse in Tarn-et-Garonne, and their family history traced back to a Jean Delon, who was born in the 15th century. When Alain was just 4 years old, his parents divorced and he was placed in foster care. Though he was treated well, he was filled with resentment and felt utterly abandoned. His parents had essentially discarded him, moving on to start new families while Alain became a part of their past they preferred to forget. Nonetheless, his mother Edith had loved him deeply. Possessive and proud, she knew he was exceptionally beautiful as a child. It wasn't hard to tell due to the inordinate number of compliments that strangers gave to her baby son. In fact, the attention became wearisome to her. During their walks in the park of Sceaux, she would attach a sign to his stroller reading, "Look at me but don't touch." The experience of being a neglected child and rejected by his own family sent him into emotional turmoil. This unresolved pain may have influenced his adult life, as he struggled with a deep-seated fear of abandonment and a constant sense of impending failure. Delon always had to contend with an inner vulnerability and tried various methods to compensate for it. Some might say overcompensate. There are voids that will never be filled. Even when I was with a woman, loving a woman, I felt alone, he admitted in 2018. After his foster parents passed away, Delon was returned to his biological parents who shared custody of him. He lived alternately with his father and his new family in Les-les-Roses, and with his mother and her new family in Bourg-la-Reine. His parents then enrolled him in the Catholic boarding school in Essonnes. During this time, Delon developed an interest in music, joining the school choir and even performing as a soloist. He was commended for his performance by Cardinal Angelo Roncalli, the Apostolic Nuncio to France, who would later become Pope John XXIII. Cinema was also an integral part of Alain Delon's early life. His father, Fabien Delon, managed a cinema named La Regina in Bourg-la-Reine. It was here that Alain first experienced the excitement of movies, watching westerns, noir films, and melodramas for free. He misbehaved in school and frequently got into fights. His behavior led to his expulsion after he assaulted a classmate. The priest suggested he be sent to a tougher religious school, so his parents agreed. During his 4 years there, Delon continued to act out, showing disrespect to his teachers. His rebellion reached a new level when he stole the director's motorcycle, which unsurprisingly led to yet another expulsion. He was kicked out of several more schools before he turned 13 and entered Saint-Nicolas-Denis Institute. It was there he had his first film role as a thug in a 22-second silent short directed by Olivier Bourguignon, a family friend. At 14, Delon decided he wanted to leave school and France. He attempted to run away but was caught after a passerby alerted the police. Having traveled 350 kilometers with a friend, Delon fell a little way short of his goal of reaching Chicago. The cops decided to put him behind bars due to his uncooperative attitude after being taken in. As a result, he was expelled from school once again. His parents, realizing he was not remotely suited for academics, decided he should leave school entirely and get a job. His mother, who had remarried a man named Paul Boulogne, a butcher from Bourg-la-Reine, decided he should become an apprentice butcher in the family business. Delon later said that he never felt at home in this new family and never felt secure there. He obtained a certificate of professional aptitude in charcuterie at Au Jambon de Paris and worked for 3 years at his stepfather's delicatessen, which, to make things worse, had a terrible reputation in the local community. Back in Paris, Delon noticed posters for the French Air Force which read, "Become a fighter pilot in 18 months." The idea of escaping his current life excited him. He saw this as a chance for a more thrilling existence. Like many young men, he was aware of the possibility of being conscripted into the French military anyway, so he decided he may as well volunteer and go and fight in the war in Indochina, as Vietnam was known then. This war was a precursor to the Vietnam War, which would erupt a few years later. As a minor, Alain needed his parents' consent to enlist. When he discovered the group of aspiring pilots was already full, Delon chose to enlist into the Navy instead. He trained in Brittany and Toulon, working on radio operations. In January 1953, he was deployed to Indochina, where he was stationed at the Saigon Arsenal. Although he witnessed little combat, he participated in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. During his time in the Navy, Delon enjoyed the camaraderie of military life and learned skills in weapon handling that would later benefit his roles in crime films. Looking back on his war experience, he said, "I was more unhappy in the Park of Sceaux than in Saigon." However, military discipline wasn't having a completely curative effect on his temperament. Delon was caught stealing a radio and other equipment, which led to serious punishment. Towards the end of his service, he was caught in another scandal, this time stealing a Jeep and taking it on a joyride. The Jeep ended up in a ditch, and Delon was arrested and jailed. His radio license was revoked, and he was expelled from the Navy. He even spent his 20th birthday in military prison. All the same, Delon often spoke about how the military instilled in him a sense of discipline and respect for France's values. He also developed a fascination with weapons, and was captivated by French actor Jean Gabon's performance in Touchez pas au Grisby, a film he saw while in Saigon. Once discharged, Delon found himself in Toulon with no clear direction. By May 1956, he was determined to avoid returning to Bourg-la-Reine. He resented his parents for allowing him to go to Indochina, and he chose to cut ties with them. Instead, he decided to strike out on his own. His family wouldn't hear from him again for years. Delon ended up at the notorious Regina Hotel in Pigalle, a name reminiscent of his father's cinema. During the day, he took on odd jobs, including unloading goods at the Halles food market and serving coffee on the Champs-Élysées. At night, he frequented edgy local bistros like Trois Canards, Narcisse, and L'Heure Bleue. Delon quickly became a favorite among the local prostitutes, who became besotted with his looks and took care of him. He often claimed that he could have become a pimp, but he saw becoming an actor as a much better outcome. In Pigalle and Montmartre, he met figures from the French underworld, including thugs and gigolos. One of these contacts, a quote homosexual named Carlos, provided him with protection. Delon was intrigued by the values of this world, such as honor, friendship, respect, and the code of silence. At 20, Delon was uninterested in high society or formal education. He spent time in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, but he was not engaged in intellectual debates about writers like Françoise Sagan or Alain Robbe-Grillet. Instead, he lived in the moment, enjoyed jazz, danced, slept with beautiful Parisian girls, and charmed everyone he met. His looks made him irresistible, and he became aware of the power he had over others. In 1956, Delon found himself in a situation which would change his life. He encountered Brigitte Aubert, a petite, blonde actress with large, mischievous eyes, and who, unlike a lot of movie stars, enjoyed hanging around the seedy bars of Saint-Germain. Aubert had appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief, alongside Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. Delon was determined to meet her, seeing her as a gateway to a better life. To summon the courage to approach her, he drank heavily. His blue eyes rimmed with black eyelashes turned out to be irresistible to her, and Aubert was soon infatuated with her little thug, as she called him. Delon moved in with Aubert, who then tried to guide him out of the underworld and into something more respectable. She envisioned a career for him as a reporter-photographer and introduced him to documentarist Françoise Reichenbach. Delon, however, did not take to this idea at all. He admired actors like Frank Sinatra and John Garfield. He was especially drawn to Garfield's modern, dynamic style and rebellious spirit. Brigitte Aubert continued to support Delon, sending him to Simone Jarnac, an actress and acting teacher who advised, with his looks he should be in cinema right away, no need to wait. So it was that in 1957, Alain Delon quickly got an opportunity to make a name for himself. By May, he had traveled to Cannes, where everyone wanted to know who this handsome newcomer was. Journalist Georges Decaune took notice. A young man has found an original way to be photographed. He drives around in a sports car claiming to look like James Dean. He calls himself Alain Delon. Jean Cocteau, who was chairing the Cannes jury, also noticed the audacious young man. Henry Wilson, an American talent scout working for David O. Selznick, was particularly interested in Delon. Wilson arranged for him to undergo screen tests in Rome. During his time at Cinecittà, Delon met Rock Hudson, who was filming A Farewell to Arms. Hudson advised Delon to sign Selznick's 7-year contract, and Delon was inclined to do so, but he would have a change of heart. A new encounter altered his plans. Michel Cordoue, the wife of filmmaker Yves Allégret, persuaded him to stay in France. Delon became romantically involved with her, and Allégret rather generously offered his wife's new boyfriend a role in his latest film. Delon's first cinematic role was as Joe, a hired gun in Send a Woman When the Devil Fails. Delon's debut on screen was not particularly memorable. He appeared somewhat unsure and awkward. Delon recalled, "I didn't know how to do anything. Allégret looked at me like that and he said, 'Listen to me, Alain. Speak as you speak to me. Look at how you look at me. Listen as you listen to me. Don't play, live.' It changed everything. If Yves Allégret hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have had this career." Shortly after finishing Send a Woman When the Devil Fails, Delon signed with Marc Allégret, Yves' older brother, who had launched careers for many notable actors. The film was Be Beautiful But Shut Up, a comedy with noir elements, where he played a small-time thug. Jean-Paul Belmondo, who was just starting his career, played a laid-back role as a sculptor's son. Delon received more prominent billing than Belmondo, something that would rankle with Belmondo for many years to come. Off-screen, Delon was known for his wild behavior. He once borrowed a car from screenwriter Pascal Jardin and wrecked it while intoxicated in the Saint-Cloud tunnel. The car rolled over 5 times, but Delon only sustained a minor injury, leaving him with a distinctive scar under his chin. He also found himself in a nightclub brawl soon after. Delon's career was rising fast, and his turbulent personal life made headlines. Just as people began to think the media attention might burn out, he became involved in a scandalous affair with actress Romy Schneider. In 1958, Delon was cast opposite Schneider in Christine, directed by Pierre Gaspard Huit. Schneider had just become internationally famous with the CC film trilogy. The two actors met for the first time on April 10, 1958, at Orly Airport in Paris. Their initial interaction was awkward. Schneider did not speak French and Delon did not speak German. Schneider found Delon uninteresting, and Delon thought Schneider was unattractive. Filming began 2 months later, and their relationship was still strained. However, they eventually fell in love. Their engagement was celebrated in Morcote, Switzerland, on the shores of Lake Lugano, with the international press in attendance. They were affectionately called Les Amants Terribles, the terrible lovers, due to their passionate and tumultuous relationship, which kept newspaper hacks and column inches for years to come. Schneider's family was very much opposed to the union, which added further troubles to their relationship. In 1959, Alain Delon took on the leading role in the Michel Boiron comedy, Women Are Weak. This film was a big success in France and was Delon's debut in American cinemas. To promote the movie, Delon made several appearances in New York. Shortly after, he starred in another Boiron film, Way of Youth, which further improved his reputation. However, the new decade was set to propel him to even greater heights with 2 remarkable films. Delon's genuine talent was quickly becoming apparent. In Plein Soleil, known in the US as Purple Noon, Delon gave a brilliant performance. Whether dressed in a cotton suit or a regatta blazer, he commanded the screen. Delon's piercing steel blue eyes were enhanced by Henri Duc's beautiful color cinematography. Based on Patricia Highsmith's novel, The Talented Mr. Ripley, the film was a hit in France and was popular in art house circuits in English-speaking countries. Highsmith herself praised Delon's portrayal. Later in 1960, Delon took the lead role in Luchino Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers. The Italian-French co-production was the victim of many controversies before and after its release. On October 27, 1960, shortly after its Italian debut, the film's release was halted, and the negative was seized following a request from Cardinal Domenico Tardini. The film was to be banned unless certain scenes were removed, including one involving a murder and another sex scene. Delon showcased his raw masculinity in the role. He prepared by undergoing rigorous physical training, including being hit in the stomach by a French champion boxer he knew from his underworld days. Visconti, who became like a father to Delon, molded him into a formidable actor. And for his part, Delon was the muse and object of lust for Visconti. Schneider said that Visconti saw in Delon the raw material of a great actor and worked on him with a strict, exclusive approach. At an aristocratic reception party, the noble Visconti even declared, "There is only one true prince in this room, and it is Alain." While the film received a mixed response from Italian critics, it was better received internationally. Later reviews were far more favorable, and the film is now lauded as a classic of Italian cinema. Around this period, Delon was considered for a lead role in Lawrence of Arabia. Excited about the opportunity, he agreed to take on the role and even attended costume fittings and planned to learn to ride a camel. An assistant was sent to find a camel, and one was transported to Paris from the London Zoo. However, just as Delon was preparing to fly to Jordan for fittings, Visconti became enraged. He insisted that Delon remain committed to his role in Rocco and his brothers, and could not be absent even briefly. The dispute was intense, and ultimately Delon had to withdraw from the Lawrence of Arabia project. Omar Sharif was cast instead, and Delon later regretted missing out on the film's massive financial success. In 1961, Alain Delon began an affair with Nico, a German actress, singer, and model. The following year, Nico gave birth to a son named Christian Aron Boulogne, or Ari. Despite being the father, Delon never officially acknowledged the child. Ari was mostly raised by Delon's mother and stepfather. Eventually, they legally adopted him, which meant that Delon's unacknowledged illegitimate son was also his legal half-brother. Ari even took the family name of Delon's stepfather, Boulogne. Ari Boulogne made attempts to gain legal recognition from Delon in 2001 and 2019, but was unsuccessful. During the 1980s, he did manage to salvage his relationship with his mother Nico, although the means to do so were horrifying. Nico was a committed junkie, and she opened her arms to her son once she realized he could score heroin for her and that they could take it together. Nico passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage during a heat wave in 1988. Ari passed away in 2023 after battling drug addiction for decades. Back in 1961, Delon made his stage debut in the John Ford play, "'Tis Pity She's a Whore," performing alongside Romy Schneider in Paris. Directed by Luchino Visconti, the production was a major success, and it broke box office records. Visconti described the play as a very harsh, very violent, very tragic play, the story of an exceptional love, also calling it Ford's masterpiece. Delon was deeply invested in the project, even putting up his own money, 15 million francs out of a total budget of 60 million. Delon struggled with the demands of stage acting, finding it tough to convey emotions and movements authentically. Visconti was often frustrated with him, especially when Delon and Schneider screeched to a halt outside the theater in their Ferrari just moments before performances were due to begin. Meanwhile, René Clément wanted to recapture the success of Purple Noon, and so he directed 2 more films with Delon. The first was The Joy of Living, a comedic film set in pre-fascist Italy. Delon starred alongside Gino Cervi and Barbara Lass, who was married to Roman Polanski. Polanski, who was learning the ropes of filmmaking, was present on set. Another notable film from 1961 was Famous Love Affairs, an anthology film featuring Delon as Albert III, Duke of Bavaria, opposite Brigitte Bardot. In 1962, after performing in Renaissance costumes in Ford's play, Romy Schneider appeared in a Chanel suit for Boccaccio 70, Visconti's latest project. As Romy returned to France for filming, Delon traveled to work with Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni on his film L'Eclisse. While L'Eclisse was appreciated by cinephiles, the director's focus was clearly on Monica Vitti's serene presence, rather than Delon's intense energy. Delon's portrayal of a lovesick character was not his most convincing work, and the film, too abstract for many viewers, failed. Delon decided not to collaborate with Antonioni again, choosing to focus instead on his role in Visconti's next project. In 1963, Delon began a relationship with Francine Canovas, a model also known as Nathalie Barthélemy. But fidelity was not his strong suit. He was also involved with Marissa Mell, both before and after announcing his engagement to Barthélemy. This relationship with Mel continued even after his marriage in 1964 and into 1965. Producer Jacques Barre was working on a heist film titled Any Number Can Win, which initially cast Jean-Louis Trintignant alongside Jean Gabin, but Delon lobbied for the role and got it. It featured Delon in a noir-inspired role. He was seen strolling with a cigarette and wearing a black leather jacket, a moment that could hardly better typify the moodily beautiful French cinema of the late 50s and early 60s. He also ended up taking distribution rights in various countries instead of a standard salary as part of the deal. This unconventional deal, later known as Delon's method, was extremely profitable and made Delon very rich. Gabin claimed that Delon earned 10 times more than he did from the film. It was also the beginning of Delon's interest in producing. Delon's reputation grew further with his role in The Leopard, directed by Visconti and starring Burt Lancaster and Claudia Cardinale. However, this time Delon resisted the old master Visconti's direction, and the director, who felt he had shaped Delon's career, became frustrated with his muse. Their professional relationship ended, with Visconti finding a new object of affection in Helmut Berger. Berger and Delon would become powerful enemies from this point as they fought for Visconti's attention. Berger would ultimately defeat Delon, but not without resorting to some underhand tactics. Berger was threatened by the relationship between Visconti and Delon, and had claimed that Delon was making his 7-year-old son, Anthony, write love letters to Visconti to lure him back. Berger later explained, "One day Delon visited us. I opened the door, and to piss him off, I asked him what his name was. Pretending not to know him, I slammed the door in his face. I knew immediately that he was going to resort to any means to advance his career. It was the red alert because, well, obviously, I was also worried about my relationship with Visconti. I did everything to ensure that Visconti did not ever again work with Delon. He had been lucky by 2 times, and that was good enough. The films Rocco and His Brothers and The Leopard had been filmed before my relationship with Lucchino. To complete my revenge, I fucked Natalie, the wife of Delon. I liked her very much indeed. We had a threesome with Maria Schneider, who became famous alongside Marlon Brando in The Last Tango in Paris." In 1964, Alain Delon and Romy Schneider ended their relationship. In 2009, Delon spoke of his regret about not marrying Schneider, and in 2018 he reiterated this, calling her the love of his life. On August 13, 1964, Delon married Nathalie Barthélemy, who then became Nathalie Delon. Their son, Anthony Delon, was born on September 30, 1964, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Nathalie later revealed that Delon's lingering feelings for Romy Schneider cast a shadow over their marriage, as he often showed deep sadness that suggested his heart remained with Schneider. During 1964 to 1965, Delon was also linked with Anne Margaret and Lana Wood. Delon's next film was The Black Tulip, a historical swashbuckler set in revolutionary France. This film allowed Delon to show off his versatility by playing dual roles as twin brothers. After this, he starred in Les Filons, released in the US as The Joy House. This film did not achieve the success it deserved. Directed by Clément again, the film had a high budget and featured a star-studded cast, including Jane Fonda and Lola Albright, with music by Lalo Schifrin. This film, like Plan Soleil, revolves around manipulation and identity theft, but here Delon's character is the one being manipulated. Delon, who stumbled into acting by chance, viewed himself as part of the tradition of showmen such as Gabin, Lancaster, and Ventura. He knew that the greatest show on earth was no longer to be found in Paris, but in Hollywood, and that it was time for him to head to California. In July 1964, Delon signed with MGM, deliberately avoiding the typical 7-year contracts used to control stars. He declared to a journalist from the New York Herald Tribune, "I want to conquer the United States. I want to be a Cooper or a Grant, someone who will be seen on screens for the next 20, 30 years. Delon arrived in Los Angeles with his new wife Nathalie, his black Ferrari, and his dog named Brando. He settled into a large home at 612 North Beverly Drive. Between poolside cocktails, he buzzed with new projects. It seemed that he was set to join the likes of Steve McQueen and Sean Connery as macho leading men who had conquered both America and the world. But in the end, Delon would fall short of those two in terms of star power. Nonetheless, at the beginning of 1965, Delon was optimistic about his role in Once a Thief. Directed by Ralph Nelson, a seasoned filmmaker, the movie featured noir veterans Jack Palance and Van Heflin. Delon played Eddie Paddock, an ex-convict who had just finished an 18-month prison sentence for armed robbery. Once a Thief did not make as much of an impression on audiences as anticipated. It failed to stand out and receive lukewarm reviews. However, it had some moments of classic noir charm. Delon soon realized that Hollywood studios were not very creative with their casting. They often placed French actors like Louis Jourdan into roles as suave Latin lovers, even though the more northern French are hardly considered a culturally Latin people, despite being part of the Romance language group. MGM similarly saw Delon as, at best, an awkward gangster, reminiscent of James Dean or Montgomery Clift. Feeling homesick, Delon missed the Parisian bistros and nightlife. After just 8 months in Los Angeles, he decided to return to Paris with his wife and child. Although he remained a major star in France and Japan, his efforts to break into the American market had not succeeded. Nevertheless, his journey in American cinema was not yet over. In May 1965, Delon returned to Spain to work on Lost Command, directed by Marc Robson. The film, produced by Columbia, was based on a novel by Jean Lartegui about the Algerian War. Unlike other Hollywood films, Lost Command was bold enough to address the French army's acts of torture during the war, a fact which angered French officials. When Lost Command was released in 1966, French generals were outraged, but the public responded positively to the performances of Quinn and Delon. On set, Delon got along well with Anthony Quinn and reunited with Claudia Cardinale and Maurice René, who were also part of the cast. While this film was an enjoyable one, the next would be something truly iconic. In Le Samurai, Delon took on a whole new persona. He transformed into Jeff Costello, a modern-day samurai. With his beige trench coat, marble statue-like expression, and intense charisma, Delon was outstanding. Director Jean-Pierre Melville had long wanted to work with Delon. After several missed opportunities, he finally had a script suited for the actor. When Delon asked the title, Melville replied, "The Samurai." Delon's curiosity was piqued, and after just 7 minutes of the script reading, he decided it was enough. Melville was taken aback when Delon then led him to a room in his home that contained only a leather bed, a lance, a sword, and a samurai dagger. Clearly, it was the role he'd been waiting for. Delon's portrayal of Costello was minimalistic yet powerful. Costello was an enigmatic character with no known past or emotions. He operated in silence, executing his tasks with cold precision. His final act, a deliberate and suicidal confrontation with the police while armed with an empty pistol, was a powerful piece of drama. The character truly lived up to his samurai code of honor. After being shot multiple times, he collapses in a theatrical manner, with only a slight trickle of blood hinting at his humanity. Until that point, it was conceivable that he was more robot than human. In interviews, Delon described his acting process for Le Samurai as erratic. He mentioned, "Suddenly I freeze on the street. I tell myself, you should do this. When I lie down, I think about it more. Lights off. However, in front of the camera, the unexpected, the discovery of the moment takes over." He admitted that living with a character like Costello could be hard for anyone around him, a fact his wife Nathalie experienced firsthand during the film's production. Delon became distant and cold, immersing himself completely in the role. But it wasn't all acting, it seems. In 1967, Delon filed for divorce from Nathalie, and their divorce was finalized on February 14, 1969. The political turmoil of May 1968, including the student uprisings and the political shift from de Gaulle to the more globalist Pompidou, was unsettling for Delon. He was a passionate patriot who was deeply affected by these changes. His dissatisfaction with centrist parties and his commitment to Gaullism persisted, even though the Gaullist movement had waned over the years. In later life, Delon ruffled feathers when he spoke of his understanding for those who supported Marine Le Pen's right-wing party, seeing them as defenders of French patriotism, though he claimed he never voted for her. In 1968, away from the rioting in Paris, Delon found a new project that thrilled him, La Piscine. Moreover, he was determined to reunite with Romy Schneider on screen, although producers Gérard Bétou and Renée Pignet preferred other actresses like Natalie Wood, Monica Vitti, or Angie Dickinson. Delon insisted on casting Schneider. He was adamant that the film would not happen without her. The producers relented. In August 1968, Delon nervously awaited Schneider's arrival at Nice Airport. She had left her husband and child in Berlin to be in the film. The past hurts and the abrupt end of their previous relationship were forgotten. Years later, Schneider would write, "The most important man in my life was and remains Delon. Even today, Alain is the only man I can rely on." Under Jacques Dere's direction, La Piscine was filmed in the sunny locales of Saint-Tropez and Ramatuelle. The story was straightforward. A couple's serene life is disrupted by the arrival of an old friend. The setting was idyllic with late mornings, breakfast by the pool, and the evening chorus of cicadas. The chemistry between Delon and Romy Schneider lit up the camera. Journalist Gilles Jacob noted upon the film's release, "Never in French cinema has a film been so immediately physical, where one perceives more intensely the heat falling from the pines, the dampness of the skin, the sensuality of an embrace, the bleary-eyed astonishment of difficult awakenings, the taste and smell of a morning coffee." Delon plays Jean-Paul, a disillusioned and unstable writer. In a bid for revenge, Jean-Paul drowns his friend Harry, who had fallen drunk into the pool, and cruelly torments him as he clings desperately to the pool's edge. While the film's scenes of sunbathing, socializing, and Jean-Paul's affair with Marianne seem leisurely, there is a menacing side to his character. Delon admitted, "I have often said that I was like an animal, a predator. I have observed and followed animals for a long time." The production of La Piscine soon became overshadowed by a major scandal. Delon's Yugoslav secretary and bodyguard, Stefan Markovic, was found murdered in a Paris garbage dump. Delon and his associate Corsican gangster Francois Marcantoni came under suspicion. The police were alerted by a letter Markovic sent to his brother stating, "If I get killed, it's 100% the fault of Alain Delon and his godfather Francois Marcantoni." If that wasn't enough of a scandal already, things were about to launch into the stratosphere. The investigation uncovered allegations of secret sex parties involving celebrities like Delon and members of the French government. Future President Georges Pompidou was implicated, with claims that his wife Claude was photographed in compromising situations with another woman. The press also reported drug dealing and blackmail among the lurid events going on behind closed doors. With the country as close to revolution as it had come since the mid-19th century, this looked like the spark that might set off the whole powder keg. As Pompidou was campaigning for president, he quickly sought to dismiss the rumors. He publicly denounced them as false and accused his political opponents of using the French intelligence agency, the SDECE, to frame him. In a 1969 BBC interview, Delon faced down questions about his alleged involvement in Markovic's death, the sex parties, and his own sexual preferences. During filming, Delon was frequently interrogated by police at Port Maillot. The producers were uncertain if Delon would be able to continue the project with the threat of a long prison sentence hanging over him. The tension created a strained atmosphere on set. The three leading actors maintained a professional distance, with assistant director Bernard Stora describing the set as resembling a medieval camp, with each actor having their own tent. Delon was able to focus enough to give another truly mesmerizing performance, and the film was a huge smash in France. Major censorship in other countries restricted its success internationally, although a restored version was released in the US in 2021 and became a surprise hit, its initial 2-week run being extended to 18 weeks. Glenn Kenny of the New York Times commented, "Pretty people behaving poorly in beautiful settings is something we don't see as much of in cinema as we used to. This is a masterclass in the subgenre, and one of unusual depth." Delon, however, would never watch the film again, due, as he explained, to the pain it caused him following the premature deaths of both Romy Schneider and his close friend Maurice Ronet. Later in 1968, Delon appeared in the provocative film The Girl on a Motorcycle, directed by Jack Cardiff. In this film, Delon played Marianne Faithfull's lover, unzipping her leather outfit with his teeth and saying, "Your toes are like tombstones." That year also saw the beginning of a 15-year relationship between Delon and actress Mireille d'Arc. They starred together in Jeff in 1969, the first film produced by Delon's company, Adele. Also in 1969, Delon signed on to star in Borsellino, and the project allowed him to act again alongside Jean-Paul Belmondo. Delon was eager to collaborate with Belmondo and was willing to take risks to make it happen. He came across the story of the real-life gangsters Paul Carbone and François Spirito while reading a crime book about French gangsters from 1900 to 1970. The film's title, Borsellino, referred to the famous hat company known for its fedora-style hats, which were popular during the film's time period of the 1920s and 1940s. The original title had to be changed after contemporary gang members objected to their forefathers' names being used, a change Delon quickly accommodated due to his shady connections. Despite Delon's initial enthusiasm to work with Belmondo, their relationship soured after filming. Delon commented, We are still what you in America call pals or buddies, but we are not friends. There is a difference. He was my guest in the film, but still he complained. I like him as an actor, but as a person, he's a bit different. I think his reaction was a stupid reaction, almost like a female reaction. Pierre Caro, an associate producer, suggested that Belmondo might have been apprehensive about working with Delon. He noticed that Belmondo demanded equal close-ups, and that Delon had to cut some of his best scenes to avoid overshadowing Belmondo. Caro speculated that they might not work together again, although Delon claimed they would, and he was right. Despite these tensions and a lawsuit Belmondo filed against Delon over billing credits, the two actors would soon work together again. They reunited for The Sicilian Clan in 1969, along with Lino Ventura. This film became one of Delon's greatest. In The Sicilian Clan, Delon played Roger Sarthe, a notorious criminal known for his violent tendencies and daring heists. Sarthe's character was a hot-headed figure who led a major heist and ultimately faced his downfall. Meanwhile, Delon faced ongoing legal troubles related to the Markovic affair and was also convicted in absentia for assaulting an Italian photographer. François Marcantoni, Delon's associate, was imprisoned for his involvement in murder but was released under judicial control in December 1969 and fully exonerated in 1976. Delon himself was never indicted. In the meantime, Georges Pompidou won the election and hastily reorganized the French Secret Service, bringing it under presidential control. Delon's relationships continued with brief romances involving actresses Anne Pariot and Lana Wood, as well as Catherine Blaney, the ex-wife of French Formula One driver Didier Pironi, who later died in a powerboating accident. Delon also had a brief relationship with Guadeloupe-born dancer and actress Madeleine Bamy, whom he met on the set of La Piscine. Bamy ended their relationship in 1971 and later became Jacques Brel's final partner. This love triangle inspired the 1969 film The Lovemates, in which Delon and Darc starred. Delon was one of, if not the most desirable man on earth at this time, but underneath the beautiful exterior he was still experiencing intense loneliness and isolation. In 1970, despite the quality of his films that year, they did not find success in the US market. This included The Red Circle, where he co-starred with Yves Montand. Delon then produced The Lovemates in 1971, a romantic drama that did not fare well either. Similarly, the comedy Easy Down There also struggled. One notable film from this period was En Flic, Jean-Pierre Melville's final film before his death. Delon played a cop, a departure from his usual roles as gangsters and criminals. Delon was frustrated with Melville's style and the film's outcome. He noted, "The public that sees Delon for the first time in a police role is left unsatisfied. They must feel frustrated because in this film, excuse the pun, he only gets a quarter of a cop." But he would soon get over this feud with Melville. When Melville died from a ruptured aneurysm in August 1973, Delon was in southern France. He rushed to Paris, devastated and in tears, well aware of the profound impact Melville had on his career and his acting style. In 1972, Alain Delon made another attempt to break into the English-speaking market with The Assassination of Trotsky, directed by Joseph Losey. Unfortunately, the film did not receive favorable reviews. On the other hand, Red Sun, where he starred alongside Charles Bronson and Toshiro Mifune, was successful. In France, Delon appeared with Simone Signoret in The Widow Coderre. He then produced and starred in the romantic drama Indian Summer, and followed it with the thrillers Traitement de Choc and Tony Arzenta, which were released the next year. In 1973, Delon decided to invest in high-profile boxing matches, finding the excitement of the ring comparable to that of a film set. Meanwhile, Delon recorded a duet with Dalida titled Parole Parole, which became one of the most famous French songs. He had first met Dalida in 1955 when they were neighbors on the Champs-Élysées. By the mid-1960s, they had become occasional lovers and remained close friends for years. Delon made another attempt at Hollywood stardom with Scorpio, starring Burt Lancaster and directed by Michael Winner. In France, he worked on The Burned Barns and Creasy. He also produced Two Men in Town, which reunited him with Jean Gabin and Borsellino & Co., a sequel to his earlier hit, Borsellino. Unfortunately, the sequel did not match the success of the original. By the 1970s, Alain Delon had become a cinematic icon thanks to collaborations with exceptional filmmakers like Clément, Visconti, and Melville, among others. Despite his fame, Delon continued to be a temperamental figure on set. He had high standards and expected filmmakers to be skilled in multiple areas, including directing, coaching actors, and overall filmmaking. If a director failed in any of these aspects, Delon could be ruthless. This reputation partly stemmed from his experience on the set of Les Granges Brûlées. Director Jean Chapot struggled under the pressure of working with two major stars, and the production became chaotic. One morning, Chapot didn't show up, prompting Delon to take over directing duties. Chapot even set a bailiff to document that Delon was not following the shooting instructions. Delon had warned Chapot from the beginning, "Jean, you have to walk all over me. If you don't do it, I'll walk all over you." In 1974, aside from Borsellino and Co. and Creasy, Delon worked on Icy Breasts, a gangster film made in France and Italy with a rather curious title. The film was a major success in its home countries and received positive reviews from critics. Next, in 1975, Alain Delon took on the role of Gypsy in La Gitane, also known as the Gypsy, delivering one of his standout performances from the 1970s. The role seemed to fit him perfectly. He was truly able to deliver the essence of a volcanic outsider. To embody this gypsy character, Delon drew from his own experiences. Much like Senard, the character he portrayed, Delon had also felt marginalized. He was a pariah within his own family, similar to how Senard felt in his own country. Senard, when facing the court of assize, had harshly remarked, "The accused bench. The gypsies have been sitting there since their birth. Society only tolerates them in wastelands or on the outskirts of dumps." Delon related to this sense of rebellion and used it to channel the pain of his character. Later that year, Delon took on the role of Commissioner Borniche in Flick Story, or Cop Story to English audiences. His character was a super cop known for 567 arrests. Wearing a khaki trench coat and a cigarette perpetually in hand, Delon portrayed Borniche with seriousness and depth. His cop was a relentless pursuer, a hunter who tried to outthink and outmaneuver his quarry, the cold-blooded killer Bousson. The two characters, living in adjacent but intersecting worlds, developed a strange friendship. Another highlight of 1975 was Zorro, a film shot in Spain with Italian director Duccio Tessari. Delon's portrayal of Zorro had the cartoonish feel of a spaghetti western, complete with close-ups, ironic music, and exaggerated gags. With a rapier in hand, he brought a touch of Douglas Fairbanks and Errol Flynn to the role. By this time, his acting had become somewhat repetitive, and the hectic pace of filmmaking began to wear on him. So, Delon turned to business. He found enjoyment in casinos, frequenting Parisian and Côte d'Azur tables, and began to diversify his activities. From his base in Geneva, his company, Alain Delon Diffusion, launched a range of products, including cigarettes, perfumes, cosmetics, and particularly iconic sunglasses. Delon, who had once been a butcher's apprentice, now sought to conquer the business world, declaring, "I feel at ease among sharks." His name had become a brand in itself, but if people believed that Delon was losing his intensity as an actor, he was about to prove them wrong in his artistic rematch with director Joseph Losey. This time, they were truly onto something. Mr. Klein was not a light-hearted film like The Sicilian Clan or Borsellino. Instead, it offered a brutal portrayal of the French collaboration with Nazi Germany during World War II, focusing on how French authorities and citizens helped to round up and persecute French Jews. The film does not feature any German soldiers, yet the sense of oppression and unease is palpable. The atmosphere is thick with tension as Alain Delon, with his closely cropped hair and refined appearance, moves through desolate gray streets like a phantom. His character, Robert Klein, acquires paintings at bargain prices, exploiting the plight of Jews who are desperate to save themselves. These acquisitions seem to give him a certain satisfaction, as he benefits from the misfortunes of others. However, some shadowy but vengeful forces eventually catch up with him. The main drama begins with a simple newspaper that appears in Klein's mailbox. Although he is not Jewish and feels secure under Nazi rule, receiving a copy of a Jewish community paper causes suspicion among his neighbors. People begin to believe that, ironically, he might be Jewish after all. Concerned, Klein discovers he is listed among the subscribers and becomes determined to find out who is behind this. Robert Klein turns into a detective, a role that overtakes his life. Delon, portraying Klein with a haunted and anxious demeanor, searches and questions, gradually isolating himself. His partner leaves him, and his best friend tries to intervene, but Klein is deaf to reason, lost in his obsession. Then Klein is listed by the Vichy authorities, an idea he finds unbearable. He lashes out saying, In this country, we are too civilized, too polite, and too recorded. Unbeknownst to him, this supposedly civilized country was confining men, women, and children in barbed wire camps. Klein finds himself on the run from the police, caught in a surreal downward spiral. Just as he is close to the truth, Robert Klein is rounded up and sent to the winter velodrome to be deported to the death camps. This was a real historical tragedy. On July 16, 1942, 13,000 Jews were arrested by the Vichy police in similar circumstances. On set, Delon was often difficult. In letters to his wife during the shoot, Joseph Losey described him as alternately blissful and abominable, behaving like a real jerk, delaying scenes and even threatening to halt production. Losey commented that Delon is searching for his identity. He believed that Delon's inner conflict greatly benefited his performance, noting, "Alain can take the greatest interest in someone. I had several occasions to see that his generosity could be extraordinary. One day he learned I was having trouble and without saying a word, sent someone with the money I needed." The film did not perform well at the box office, which was a shock to Delon, and it is a masterful movie. After this, Delon found himself reconsidering his career direction. He reflected, "When a film as important as Mr. Klein, with its direction, subject, and performance, does not receive the success it deserves, it puts me in an anxious situation. There is a conflict between actor Delon and producer Delon. When you satisfy the general public, you displease the intellectuals. And when you please them, you displease the others. What to do?" So Delon decided to focus on crime films. He began with a minor Italian gangster film called Boomerang, and continued with several films in the genre until 1977. These included The Gang, Armageddon, Man in a Hurry, and Death of a Corrupt Man. The latter film was particularly notable for its critique of big government and the struggles of the poor against authoritarianism. In a memorable final speech, a police commissioner declares, "The bastards annoy me. They are rotting the country. Today's schemers occupy the temple, run newspapers, fund election campaigns, elect those who will then give them contracts. They form a new elite. We are fighting the same battle. We are participating in the same wash. Our goal is the same, to cure the country of leprosy." To this, Delon's character responds coldly, "Corruption disgusts me. Virtue gives me chills." In the years following, Alain Delon continued to appear in French genre films, though none of them made much impact at the box office. Notable among these were 3 Men to Kill, a French crime thriller, The Concorde Airport 79, an air disaster film, and Tehran 43, a Soviet-French political thriller about Operation Long Jump, the 1943 plot by Nazi Germany to assassinate Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt during the Tehran Conference. By the early 1980s, Alain Delon was beginning to consider stepping back from his career. He had become a major star. His presence was a constant feature at Parisian nightlife spots and the Cannes Film Festival, and Delon enjoyed his fame. He once remembered an encounter with Andy Warhol at a reception, boasting, "He never took his eyes off me all evening." The crime genre seemed a natural fit, prompting him to try his hand at directing 2 crime films in the early 1980s, For a Cop's Hide and The Fighter. He stated, "It was quite normal for someone like me or like Clint Eastwood to direct a certain type of film, let's say a noir series. I made 2. Rather than imitating Clint Eastwood, Delon set out to compete with Hollywood, which he accused of dominating French cinemas. Determined to counteract American influence, he was committed to making entirely French films. Alain adopted a more rugged look, swapping his boating blazer from Plein Soleil and Varney sunglasses from La Piscine for jeans and a leather jacket. He rejected anything he saw as corrupt or mediocre, embracing a slogan to match Eastwood's "Make My Day, go fuck yourselves." His tough outer shell was about to receive a serious shock, however. In May 1982, Romy Schneider was found dead in her apartment of a heart attack, possibly induced by her years of alcoholism. She was just 43 years old. Delon was devastated, and a year later he had more grief to contend with when his good friend Maurice Ronet died at age 55. Between 1977 and 1987, Delon appeared in 7 urban thrillers. These films were filled with dramatic car chases and intense violence. In these movies, Delon's characters had little patience for villains. He would shoot them in the knees, stab them with forks, or sometimes good old-fashioned knives. The peak of his on-screen violence came in 1985, with Parole de Flic, written by anarchist Frédéric Fajarie, who also wrote Ne reveillez pas un flic qui dort, a later noir film for Delon. In this film, Delon's character steps things up by using grenades. He gets blown up and still continues to fight, very much a part of the 1980s action movie zeitgeist. But he saw these often cheesy action films as reflecting his own views, which were marked by a certain world wariness and cynicism by this point. He said in one television interview, "The sense of honor, friendship, duty is disappearing." Later, in an interview with Paris Match, he spoke of his disdain for modern times, saying, "I hate this era. I vomit it. There is no respect anymore, no promises. Only money matters." In 1984, Notre Histoire provided a break from Delon's monotonous crime thriller career trajectory. He stood out in Bertrand Blier's unique, absurd universe. Blier wrote a role for Delon as a down-and-out mechanic struggling with alcoholism. Delon took a risk, intentionally tarnishing his glamorous image with this role. In Notre Histoire, his character is a pitiful figure, a long way from the glistening playboy or hard-boiled gangster of most of his films. In 1990, there would be another fascinating collaboration. However, the long-awaited partnership between Jean-Luc Godard and Delon turned out to be less exciting than anticipated. At the beginning of his career, Delon had been overlooked by Nouvelle Vague directors like François Truffaut, Claude Chabrol, and Godard. But in 1989, he agreed to work with Godard on the aptly titled Nouvelle Vague, without the need for much consideration. The fact that the role remained unknown to him before filming, and that Godard didn't provide a script, did not faze Delon. Delon accepted this approach, stating, "An actor remains an interpreter. He can mark a film, but he is not a creator." Following the film's first screening at Cannes, some claimed that Delon left the room visibly angry. However, Delon maintained that he had praised the director. Audiences hoping for a film that revived Godard's early Nouvelle Vague style were left confused and largely disappointed. One thing was clear: the film, with its chaotic and opaque style, was unlike anything else. In 1987, Delon met Dutch model Rosalie van Bremen while shooting the music video for his song, Comme au cinéma. They began a relationship and had 2 children, Anouchka Delon, born November 25, 1990, and Alain Fabien Delon, born March 18, 1994. Their relationship ended in 2001. Delon wondered if the era of cinematic stars was over. He felt that cinema, which once celebrated stars, now preferred regular Joes. He lamented, "We used to see Gary Cooper kissing Ingrid Bergman or Grace Kelly on screen. It was wonderful. But one day, for various reasons, we wanted to reassure people by saying that they needed to get closer to reality, so that everyone could identify with everyone. Since then, actors have looked like the plumber across the street, or my janitor." Delon saw himself as out of step with modern cinema. He opposed the changes in the industry, the commercialization, and the evolving society he no longer recognized. He consoled himself with the belief that it wasn't him being rejected by the public, but rather the cinema itself. "Our era does not provide roles for an actor like me. They only want to make comedies that don't make me laugh much. I'm not really in tune with the times." Delon's last major film role was in Patrice Lecomte's Une Chance sur Deux in 1998, which also flopped. Delon announced his intention to retire from acting after this, although he continued to take on occasional small roles. For the next 20 years, he remained somewhat visible to the public, although much of his time was spent at his home in Switzerland, where he was finally able to enjoy a private life with little drama. In 2018, after a 7-year break from cinema, Delon was set to appear in a new film titled La Maison Vide, alongside Juliette Binoche, and directed by Patrice Lecomte. However, French media reported in November 2018 that the project had been cancelled, with no specific reasons given. He made another appearance as himself in the 2019 film Toute Ressemblance, where he was featured as a guest on a talk show. In April 2019, at the age of 83, Delon released a new single titled Je n'aime que toi, composed by Rick Allison and Julia Paris. Delon had previously had music success with his duet with Shirley Bassey on the 1983 hit Thought I'd Ring You. At the 2019 Cannes Film Festival, Delon was honored with an honorary Palme d'Or for his extensive film career. A selection of his films was showcased at the festival. However, the award stirred controversy due to past comments he allegedly made about the treatment of women and his comments about his admiration for Marine Le Pen. Thierry Frémaux, the festival's artistic director, addressed the issue during the ceremony, stating, "We know that intolerance is back. We're being asked to believe that if we all think the same, it will protect us from the risk of being disliked or being wrong. But Alain Delon is not afraid of being wrong, being disliked, and he doesn't think like others, and he's not afraid of being alone." Delon responded with emotion, saying, "For me, it's more than the end of a career. It's the end of a life. It feels as though I'm receiving a posthumous tribute while being alive." He received the award from his daughter, Anushka Delon. Later that year, he suffered 2 strokes which severely reduced his public appearances. In July 2021, during his first interview since the strokes, Delon mentioned his intention to act in one final film. Later in September 2022, he interviewed Ukrainian President Zelensky on TV for a special program about the war in Ukraine, and he gave his support to the Ukrainian people. On January 4, 2024, Alain Delon filed a complaint against his son, Anthony, following an interview in Paris Match, where Anthony discussed their father's declining health and accused his half-sister Anushka of manipulating Delon regarding the inheritance. Anthony described their father as weakened and unable to bear seeing himself in such a state, a description that enraged Delon, who is still mentally very sharp. Delon's lawyer stated that his client cannot bear the aggressiveness of his son Anthony, who keeps telling him that he is senile. The affair turned into a public scandal, and a feud developed between Delon's children, who squabbled over their inheritance, while their father was still very much alive, to his great chagrin. Then, on February 26, 2024, Delon had another unpleasant surprise when police raided his home and seized 72 firearms and 3,000 rounds of ammunition, after a court-appointed official who noticed a weapon in the residence alerted a judge. Delon's life was as controversial as his career. Raised in a harsh environment marked by abandonment, crime, and war, his natural beauty and relentless ambition helped him become an icon. Alain Delon passed away at his home in Douchy-Montcorbon, France, at the age of 88 on August 19, 2024. Alain Delon was more than just an artist. He was a persona, a face that often overshadowed his actual work. He crafted an extraordinary identity in French cinema, one that frequently eclipsed his performances. Few actors have dedicated themselves to their craft with the same intensity, and it is something that has been sorely missed in recent decades. This face was illustrated in 2010, when an ad campaign revived a snapshot from La Piscine, a dark-haired, blue-eyed man of dangerous beauty. This was not a sanitized male model, with all the correct hashtags on their social media profiles to make sure everyone knows they are safe and unthreatening. This was Alain Delon, former thug, would-be pimp, and possibly a man implicated in an underworld murder. The ad was a sensation, and it proved that no matter how anodyne movie stars become, there will always be a place for one as thrilling as Alain Delon in our cinematic collective memory. That's about all for this episode. We'd love it if you would leave us a comment, like, or subscribe to the channel. It helps out more than you can imagine. And according to our data, almost 80% of our regular viewers are not subscribed. Otherwise, why not check out our Patreon to help keep the videos coming? We are truly grateful for the generosity of all of our Patreon and YouTube members. And you also get some great perks for signing up. Links are in the description, as well as to our store where we have some great Hollywood-themed t-shirts and other merch on sale. That's all from me. See you next week. Sweet dreams.